So let's look at keyboard controls in your Java video games. In this episode, what I want to do is I want to create something on the screen and then manipulate it using the keyboard. Now, we can use a different set of keys here. I could use the arrow keys, whatever. But I'm going to tell you, in my previous experience in developing video games, one of the things I noticed is that the arrow keys have this weird quirk to them, and they can be very fickle. So instead of using the arrow keys, I want to use the WASD keys, which seems to be a very common convention in most video games. Now, you're free to change these. I'm going to show you how to bind the arrow keys, but in the end, we're going to use the WASD keys. So the first thing I want to do is look at the libraries that we're going to use in order to do this. So I'm going to open up the Java API, and I went just to the 1.8 Java docs, and I went to Java AWT event, and then down here you're going to see the key listener. There's only one library involved with this, that is the key listener library. And if we scroll down to look at the method summary for this, we'll see there are 3 different key events we can use: key pressed, key released, and key typed. Now, I personally don't have very good experience with the key typed function. I know that other programmers who this is their religion. They love key typed. They use it in all of their programs. Personally, I prefer the key pressed and key released. So I'm going to show you how I would use key pressed and key released to add key events to our program. I'm going to start with a pre-written program and just a few key elements here. I have my 3 libraries to start off with: the AWP library, the swing library, AWT event, and by the way, the AWT event is where our keyboard listener is. And then I'm creating this J panel called keyboard. I've extracted the JFrame out here. We may not need it for this, but just in case we needed to do any interaction with the JFrame, I wanted access to it, so I put it as one of our instance variables. This X and Y coordinate is the location of the object that we're going to control on the screen. Inside our constructor, we're setting the size of the window, 640 by 480. And it's the very standard size that I'm personally used to, so I'm going to be doing most of our applications in this size. Setting the default color of the background to black. It's just a personal preference. Setting the frame, I'm giving it the title keyboard, so that's what I'll show in the window. Feel free to change that to whatever you wish. Adding our keyboard panel to the JFrame, packing it, and then setting it visible. And all of this is in the graphics video, so if you want to know more about that, you can go look at it. In our paint component, and we're using the parent JPanels repaint, and then creating a green ball, and we're centering this ball on its X and Y coordinate, and then the main method to create this keyboard. Alright, so that's what we have to get started with. Let's go ahead and look and see what that does. So I'm going to run the program here, and there it is. It's just a thing on the screen. Now I can't control it yet. Try moving it. Nope. Okay, so let's add some keyboard controls here. So when we're adding the keyboard controls, previously I talked about adding mouse controls, and when you add the mouse controls, you want to make sure that you add the mouse controls to the actual component that you want to control with the mouse. The keyboard is a little bit different. I personally prefer adding the keyboard to the JFrame, and specifically, and this might just be my coding style, but I've noticed a quirk that if you add the keyboard too early, you don't actually get the keyboard controls. So adding the keyboard is one of the very last things I want to do. So I'm going to come after the pack function there, and what I want to do is add the key listener to the JFrame itself. That way the keys will interact with the JFrame, and we can pull the information out of that. So I'm going to say frame.add key listener, and And you might remember our friend the adapter from the mouse lesson. So I'm going to add an anonymous key adapter class. And this time I'm going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to add the two functions, the key pressed and key released. So public key pressed. Okay, so it's going to be my key pressed key event, and then key released key event. KE short for key event. I don't want to pollute my namespace here. Now I've created these two events. And quite honestly, I'm probably actually only going to need one of these. But I'm going to use them both. In fact, I decided to change this a little bit from what I had planned. I'm going to consolidate these into one function process. And I'm going to create a process called process. And what I want to do is I want to get that keyboard event. Actually, let's call this key so that our code will make a little more sense to us when we look at it later. So the key is what we're getting from the event. So I want to get that key code from the key. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say either true, it was pressed, or false, it was not pressed. So I'm going to use this one process function to handle both when a key is pressed and when it is released. And it's going to be false when it's released. Okay? Alright, groovy. I want to compile that just to make sure. Okay, and it says I don't have my process function. So let me add my process function. By the way, compiling to test your code is a really good way to ensure that you don't have any errors in your code as you're typing. Just like one or two lines in, compile your code. Just make sure you're on the right track. Alright, so in here we're going to have the key code and whether or not the key was pressed. Okay, so let's compile again and check to make sure everything is okay. Awesome. So it still doesn't do anything. It is getting those key presses. In fact, what I want to do is I want to filter out those key presses. I'm going to do that using a switch statement. Okay, I'm going to pass in that key code, and right now I'm just going to create a default for the key code, and what I want to do is get the actual number that is being generated by that key press. And just for fun, let's add whether or not it was pressed so that we can see what happens when it's pressed and released. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, and so there it is. And let me press, I'm going to do left arrow key, up arrow key, right arrow key, down arrow key. So what you see, the left is code 37, up is 38, right is 39, down is 40. Alright, let's do the same thing with AWSD. Okay, so this is A, 65, W is 87, D is 68, and S is 83. Now, one of the important things that you should note from that is that these are the ASCII values for the capital letters. So if you wanted to trap any other letter on the keyboard, you could do that by doing the capital letter value. I'm going to show you another way that we can do that as well. Okay, so in our switch statement here, what I want to do is set up the case statements, and I'm just going to use the letter case A. Okay. Oh, before I do this, I need a place to store these. Okay, so I'm going to create some Boolean values to say what's this key press. So we want left, up, right, and down. By the way, when you create a Boolean variable, its default value when you create it is false. So those are going to have the value false to start out with. So let's begin with A. A is to the left, so we're going to say left equals pressed, and then break. Okay, so if we push the key down, this will be true. If it's released, it'll be false. Okay, and then I want to do the same thing with W, and W would be up, V would be right, and finally S would be down. Okay, so those are going to be those keys, but we actually need to do something with them. Okay, so what are we going to do? We need a timer here. Yeah, we need a timer. So after the frame, let's go ahead and create a timer for ourselves. Okay, so we have the action performed function, and in here what we want to do is, let's just create a function called update, and then we want to repaint the screen. And so every 5 milliseconds it's going to update and then repaint the screen. In my update function, what we're going to do, if left is pressed, then let's see, let's subtract 5 from x. If right is pressed, let's add 5. If up is pressed, let's see, that would be y minus equals 5. And if down is pressed, we'll add 5. Okay. Alright, so let's see, we have our key listeners, we have our timer. Oh, we need to start the timer, t.start. Okay. We've got our update, which will relocate the players on the screen, our keyboard controls. So let's go ahead and try this and see what happens. So push left, you move left, push left, right, up, down. There you go. That's pretty fast. Play around with it. So here you have basic action on the screen. Play around with the numbers. Maybe do some interaction if you leave the screen. But this should get you started and should get some juices flowing for some creative ideas you might have. You know, maybe we have the start for a Space Invaders game here, or maybe an RPG, a fighter game. I don't know. But just think about it. Come up with some creative ideas. You know, have fun with it. And above all, just enjoy yourself.